Welcome everyone, and I believe everybody had a wonderful previous session. We shall continue that particular session after all our other sessions are done, which is around at 5:15. Moving on to our next session, I think you all had a glimpse about it by the AV that was playing, which is the joy of less, being human in the minimum. And for this, I don't think I need to give any introduction. It is by, and you'd all know him very well. It is by Mr. Karan Groher, from Karan Groher and Associates. And I would like everyone to give an applaud when he comes on the stage for the session.
It's great to be here, and I came to see your workshop. I'd like to add that a few years ago, for Century Ply, I did a similar kind of workshop, and I'm going to use some images of that workshop, which what we did was that I took 15 architects to Calcutta, and I went to the Century Ply office and factory, and what my mandate to my friend architects was that we would only take what was on the ground. So we picked up stuff that they were actually throwing away, which is about 30% what comes into the factory, because it is damaged, it has been eaten by moths, it's been eaten by termites, and from the sawdust and what we found on the ground, these were the kind of things that we made. We made 49 veneers and laminates in 2 days, and converted what I called a waste into gold. So I think that with Somani, I want to make a proposal, and this was another idea I had, that we got young designers from all over the world, and these are the kind of products that we were able to make at this factory. So maybe one will talk to Somani if they are willing to carry on this idea which you started this morning, and maybe a group of you who's interested can come together and actually work with us. This is a young architect designer from New York who came and did that incredible screen that you saw. So I'm going to take your permission to extend this idea to Century if you all think it is worth your while, and we can then work together on that. I want to start my presentation to say that whenever you see something beautiful in the landscape, the only one screw up is the building that either you or I have done. We screw up the landscape each and every time we touch it. And therefore, Aldo Leopold has said that the oldest task in human history is to live on a piece of land without spoiling it. There is a lot of talk about climate change and global warming, and the West, particularly the West, denies that it's even happening. But if I show you this slide, sound?
मुझको बाहों में तुम घेरो समझी ना सेन्योरिटा चाहत के दो पल भी मिल पाए.
This is the only way we can get out of that music. That was the music I had for that Century Ply, because that was the theme song that we played at the factory the whole day. But what I was wanting to say to you is that if you see this image, which I'm going to put on the screen, of this polar bear, there can be no doubt that about the fact that there is something happening, because this guy is trying to find his home that problem. So if you look at the world that God gave us, that's what we've done to it. So these images that you see don't surprise you at all. Is somebody on the phone? Can I borrow your phone? Give it to me. No, that call is for me. So that is the kind of image that we see. And this is the image that we don't get disturbed by. And that is all being created by us. And it won't be very far away that is the kind of masks that you and I will have to wear, because that is the kind of pollution that we have created. I want to also say that in the next very short while, I have put together 800, Suno mister, hello, you can leave the room and talk outside. In the next 800 slides, which you will see in the next 4 minutes, are the kind of things that are going to disappear, thanks to all of us. In the last 1 year, we have lost 100 tigers, 800 elephants, 16,000 species of insects, mammals have disappeared from the earth in the last 9 years. That's the kind of destruction that has taken place. And therefore I want to show you that I made this very short clip about 4 years ago. And since that time, I'm seeing it for the first time with you today. And I find that some of the images that you're going to see have also since then disappeared. So that's to tell you the kind of times that we are living in. whole. That is very important. And this extraordinary image that you see on the screen is a friend of mine, Jane Goodall. She spent the last 40 years in the forests of Gombe looking at and understanding the chimpanzee. And she was following this chimpanzee family for about 9 months when this chimpanzee took out his hand and felt her hair. That's the most beautiful image. This came out in National Geographic. And the man who took this photograph actually married Jane Goodall. But that is what is harmony with the whole. That if I hadn't told you that that hand in that image on the right was a hand of a chimpanzee, you may not have even guessed it. And there he was playing with Jane Goodall's hair. If that is what we've done to the environment, let's look at what we've done at our ice shelves. You know, this is the Wilkins ice shelf. And I remember a picture of it in 2007 and then a picture in 2009. And I was at this World Summit with world leaders, and there was Karzai and Tony Blair and Clinton and everybody. And I remember asking them, that little piece that you see, all this ice in the middle has disappeared. There's that little piece left. And I asked the whole crowd of, I think there were 100 world leaders, I said, how big do you think that is? And no one knew. That little piece disappeared and was 7 times the size of Manhattan. 7 times. 0.07% is the fresh water that exists for mankind, and that is all in ice. And if that ice starts disappearing, we are in trouble. Because the next war will not be fought over oil, it will be fought over water. And continuing this, we said, let's look at other glaciers. And I remember this glacier in Greenland. And you see this, that's that small bit we're looking at. And just to give you an idea, that little piece which broke off was 3 times the size of Hong Kong and 4 times the size of Manhattan. That's the kind of damage that is happening to the ice cap. I also want to say that everything is in this world is intertwined. I remember going to Goa and finding that there was a lot of damage being done on the beaches of Goa, and Indira Gandhi was our Prime Minister, and she was hosting that Nam and Chogam summit in Goa. And she was so horrified that she said, you cannot do anything 500 meters away from the sea edge. That became the coastal CRZ, the coastal regulatory zone. And there was this woman who also heard at 9 o'clock at night that there was a Haveli being torn down in Jaisalmer, took a helicopter, reached the Patwa Haveli at Jaisalmer and stopped it and made Jaisalmer completely a kind of a heritage site which you could not do anything. So this photographer, again National Geographic, took a cube of 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot and placed it in 3 places, 4 places in French Polynesia. And these are the kind of insects that pass through that 1 foot by 1 foot, that many. And if you look at what happened in South Africa and what happened in Costa Rica and what happened in the Duck River in Tennessee in the USA, so what we are trying to say here is that when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds that it is attached to the rest of the world. And I come back to my example of Indira Gandhi, that this plastic on the beaches of Goa, there was an albatross who used to fly to Goa and ate the plastic thinking it was fish. And then this albatross and this group of albatross flew 6,000 miles back home and fed this plastic, which they thought was food, by vomiting it into the mouths of their babies. And these fat babies died 4 months later, and then some woman cut the stomach of this baby and found 22 cigarette lighters in the stomach, plastic. So don't tell me that what you do here, for example in Delhi, does not have any effect 3,000 miles away. It does. It's all interconnected. And therefore, there is Atlas in the middle who says, screw it, why should I waste my time? He's the guy who's got the world on his shoulders. And Clinton, of all people, saying that we are linked in so many different ways, we can't get a divorce. So I think that when you as architects, and to be architects, especially all of you young students of architecture, you are going to have to make choices all the time. That's what architecture is about. Choice. And when you make the choice, you've got to ask, is it useful? What is the impact of this choice? How will I dispose of this? And is it beneficial to others? And that is a fantastic last question. Is it beneficial to others? I have come to the conclusion after a 40-year practice that the practice of architecture is actually to change lives, not to make great buildings, not to provide habitation, not to build malls, but to change lives. I promise you, it is really what an architect should be all about. I remember 30 years ago, I went to the National Institute of Design, and there was in your honor, there was a Danish designer, a lady like you, who went to a small village called Javaja in Rajasthan, and the families didn't know what to do, the women didn't know what to do, and she taught them how to make rugs. So these women said to me that, Karan Saab, when will you come and give us some rugs to make? And I said, I promise I'll come. And then for 30 years I didn't get a job which demanded rugs. The other day we got a hotel project. And I told my client, I said, listen, I know what I'm going to do. We need 175 rugs. Let's go to Javaja. He said, what about the design of my hotel? I said, no, the design will come, but let's order these rugs. So I trooped off to Javaja with my client, and we ordered 175 rugs. And the rugs have come. And they have changed the lives of 56 families. That's a wow feeling. I don't know what the hotel is going to look like. I'm not interested. But I feel I have made a difference. And that's what I want all of you to feel, that you have made a difference. So let's take these kids, coming back to this idea. These are the kids born now in Sherborne, where there was that nuclear leak, and not one of the kids is normal. And that is because their mothers and fathers actually were there at that leak. And every one of these kids is deformed. Not one kid. For no fault of their own, no? They had nothing to do with Sherborne. It was our doing. And because we inhaled the toxic fumes of that nuclear leak, there is not one normal kid. At that World Summit where I spoke, I met the President of Mexico. And the President of Mexico had seen a presentation of mine, and she said to me, she said, do you know something, that in Mexico, when the children are asked to paint the sky, they do not use the color blue. I said, I beg your pardon? What color do they use? She said, grey. They haven't seen blue skies. No, that's a wow, yeah. That if a child who paints the sky doesn't paint it blue. And that got me thinking that I love this song of Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. So I'm going to play this song of Louis Armstrong for you. What a wonderful world, but the images that you're going to see are not so wonderful.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
You all must have heard of Charlie Chaplin. He was supposed to be the Joker. He made us laugh. I cannot imagine Charlie Chaplin saying anything serious until I read this 60 years ago. And that's what he said. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we've lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical. Our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. Here was this cartoon, this clown, this joker, and he wrote this profound thing 60 years ago, that more than machinery, we need humanity. And I think this is something else that all of you have to remember, that in your work, in your architecture, there has to be that architecture of humanity. There has to be this architecture which is to change lives. That is your role. Your role is to serve. And I would say that I know your reaction is going to be that what can we do? We are only students in Delhi. What can we do? And I don't agree with you, because this is the mayor of Seoul, and he said he found out that Seoul is very much like Bombay, linear city, and he found out that the main road, let's say from Churchgate to the airport, Santa Cruz in Bombay, that main road was built over a river. And he thought that he must bring this river back, and he did. And just look what this one man could achieve. Every night there are 200,000 people at this river. I was there for 7 days, and every evening when my host asked me what I wanted to do, the only thing I wanted to do was to go back to the river. He could do that. I have another friend who did, just close that door. Isko band karo. Hello. Isko band karo. I have another friend who owned 100 acres of a piece of land, and he was developing it for quarry dust. You know, dust to make roads. Nothing great, not diamonds, no gold. And that's what his land looked like after he had quarried it. And I say to you that I think at some stage he felt bad. So he put a plastic lining and started to collect water. He planted 300,000 trees. Excuse me, आप या तो अंदर जाओ या बाहर चले जाओ. बंद करो. He planted 300,000 trees, and that's what the place looks like today. And therefore I say to you that it is possible for us to give back to the earth more than what we've got from it. It is possible because this is not what he inherited. This is what he made. And I think that that is something that you should remember. All this business about sustainability and green buildings that you have to reduce, you have to recycle, you have to reuse, I think is bunk. I think you have to regenerate. It's not enough to reduce. I think you've got to do this, regenerate. And I think, I'm the president of the Association of British Scholars in Baroda, and a very, very small lady, the wife of the UK ambassador, said to me, Karan, let's walk and collect money. So I said, madam, I don't know where you come from, but in India we walk and no one gives us money. So I think it's a stupid idea. She said, which is the most famous walk that you can think of in Gujarat? And I said, the Dandi March. I had no clue where was Dandi. I had no clue how far it was. It was 397 kilometers. And she said, let's walk. And we'll collect money. And we walked. And it took 18 days. And we collected money. And we collected 80 lakhs. 80 lakhs. It was just mind-boggling. We would walk on the street, we would walk on the highway, and this walk went viral. It was on every television. Cars would stop. People would get out of cars. They would do namaste. It was just unbelievable. At Dandi, I turned back to see how many people were following me. If you can see that picture in the middle, it went into the horizon. I think there were 4,000 or 5,000 people who had joined that walk. It was amazing. It was just amazing. That's what you can do. That is architecture. So architecture is not about only building buildings. I want to talk to you about this idea of regenerating. And many people feel that we must have green roofs. That whatever you have built on from the ground and taken away from the earth, you must give it back on the roof. And this is a very famous building in California. And that it's very special because I went onto the roof of this building. And it is quite amazing. There are butterflies, there are birds. And I'm going to share with you a small video of this building.
From the start, the new California Academy of Sciences building has been a giant science experiment covered with a living roof, a huge expanse of dirt with real plants growing almost as nature intended. The original idea came from groundbreaking architect Renzo Piano.
He spent some time walking around Golden Gate Park, getting a sense for the setting here, looking out at the surrounding topography of San Francisco. And he came back downstairs after spending about an hour up on the roof of the old building. And he had this very iconic now line drawing. It was a green felt tip pen sketch of a rolling roof line.
That sketch launched plans for what may be the most complicated living roof ever built. Curved steel beams were installed to create a rolling hillside effect, like the hills of San Francisco. The building has two giant domes, each 90 feet in diameter. This is the skeleton inside the new high-tech planetarium dome. And this is the start of the Rainforest Dome. The contractor hired a roller coaster company to create the curving ramp inside. The roof is made of 7 different layers, providing everything from insulation to drainage. It's designed to absorb 98% of the rainwater that hits it. There are 9 types of plants, all native to Golden Gate Park, each variety chosen to provide habitat for birds and insects.
The roof may last up to 400 years. These are long-lived plants, resistance and resilience. That's what we're building into the structure and building into the natural landscape.
The plants were grown in biodegradable trays made of coconut husks. In May of 2007, crews finally began placing the trays on the roof. They'll be watered for a few months. Then the plants are supposed to be self-sustaining and enjoyed for generations. Now that the roof is finished, insects have already discovered the flowers, and the plants are growing in as expected. Beyond beauty, there's another benefit.
All that soil, there's 6 inches of soil up on the roof, makes it a great insulator, so we'll use a lot less energy on heating and cooling the building beneath it.
So they made actually a barren roof into this extraordinary garden. In Manhattan, there was this abandoned railroad, elevated single track, and it remained like that for many years, and this is in Lower Manhattan, until one day somebody decided to make it into a park. So you can see the railroad, and it is now this extraordinary park. That's the way you give back. You take something that we have done, and we have done it wrong, and then do it right. And there is no good time to do what is right. Now is the time to do what is right. And any of you and all of you, I'm sure, can do that. It is an attitude. It is the way you define what you're going to do with yourself and what you see in how you're going to produce your architecture. This is another friend of mine, and he has just won the award in the Venice Biennale, Min-Suk Chu from Korea. And he says that if we share more and own less, that means in a tower, instead of owning everything in the tower except the lift well and the staircase block, if we just have smaller areas that we own and more areas that we share, our cities could possibly look like that. And he also says that in all his projects, and this is a project he's done for children, he's always trying to give back greenery more than what he's taken from the ground on what he's built. Yet another friend in South Africa, this is the Kruger National Park. He was given 30,000 hectares of land of the Kruger National Park. And the government of South Africa said, you can do what you like here on one condition, that 20 years from now this hotel has to disappear and no one has to know that this hotel was ever made here. You can charge what you like, and you give us 800 kilometers of dirt track in Kruger with the money you make so that we can look at the animals. And this hotel, which is one of the most beautiful hotels, has about, it ranges from 6 rooms to 12 rooms, costs $1,000 a night to stay in. So you can see the structure on the right. It looks like a nest of birds. Very simple, very extravagant, very beautiful. So if you have to build, you can build without what we call sitting lightly on the earth, reducing your footprint so that you have as less damage as you can on where you build. Yet another friend in South Africa, and this is the other idea, that can you use your architecture to bring mankind together? And this was when Nelson Mandela became the first black president and hosted the FIFA World Cup. He had a white African team, and he was the first black president. And he appointed this white architect and said, build me a stadium. And this architect looked at the pots used by the local people, and that really became the idea of a stadium. And you know the story, that how this South Africa actually won the FIFA World Cup that year, and the extraordinary idea of Nelson Mandela to bring white and black people together. Not taking any vengeance on the white people for what they had done to him for all his years of captivity, but to produce an architecture that brought people together. And that is the building as you see it at night. I feel that all architects, like the doctor community and fraternity, must take this oath that first we should do no harm. This is what every doctor has to say before he becomes a doctor. And I think we need it more than doctors, because we do more harm than doctors. And I think it would be a damn good idea if every student said that every day of his college working day, that I will not do any harm. You know, I'm looking at these very beautiful jalis, and very early in our practice we said that what would be the defining role of our practice? and we looked at the fact that the Indian house and homes and buildings in India were built around a courtyard, unlike the Western architecture which stood in the landscape. That the landscape was contained and was not the container like in the West. That there was an architecture of place. The fact that we used the idea of the screen or the jali to cool passively. So I am saying this became our defining idea. And we used it in all our buildings. And I am embarrassed to show you this picture that it took me 5 weeks to develop this jali, which won the award for the best building of the year of the Indian Institute of Architects. And the jali which you can see on the right is our jali, and yet, so now Mr. Hello, who's on the phone here? And yet you look at that woman who is an uneducated woman, or you think she's an uneducated woman, and look at that extraordinary screen she's made. My screen looks like shit. You agree? He's being too polite. He's not saying that. I think my screen looks like shit. So the fact is that this building actually was chosen as one of the 14 buildings for this millennium. And you know, where I stay in Baroda, and where I have spent 30 years of my life trying to make this site a World Heritage Site from the age of 23. And this is the site that I could ultimately make a World Heritage Site for India, and learned all my architecture at this site. And it is here that I want to tell you that the root of all learning is in your past. It is the DNA that you have is your culture. The DNA is your heritage. The heritage is your brand. And tomorrow I will be speaking, and if some of you can come, it'd be great if you can come. I'm talking about heritage as a brand, for branding a new architecture for India. But the Aga Khan and a few of us were interviewed for this.
Each year, over 3 million pilgrims travel to the Kalikamata temple on the summit of Pavagad Hill in the North Indian state of Gujarat. But as they climb up the winding path to the shrine, they're passing through an area that's home to one of the wonders of India's architectural heritage, dating back over 2,000 years. The city was so far off the map that the area was dynamited with impunity for gravel for road building. Local architect Karan Grover led a team determined to see it stopped.
You have the hill which sort of encompasses the city, and you can see those incredible interventions where there was this dynamiting for quarrying, for these mines. There were over 114 mines. It took us about 20 years to get that mining to stop.
The site of Champaner covers 6 square kilometers with over 115 separate structures ranging from mosques to ramparts to granaries to a mint. For his work helping protect the ancient city of Champaner, our heritage hero, Karan Grover. He's been so effective that in 2004, the ancient complex was added to the World Heritage List.
I believe that the architecture of our studio is driven by the buildings that I have seen in Champaner. So I feel that if there is some way that all of you can look at your heritage, and instead of building those nameless, faceless glass and steel buildings, look at what we have. And you know, it's strange that we are trying to copy the West and make inappropriate buildings which don't work in our country. And the West is actually copying us, because that image on your right is a computer rendering of Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, one of the largest firms of architecture in New York. And that is the building that they've done, the Park Hotel in Hyderabad. And if you see those little petals, and that is the jali detail. And they fed it into the computer as to where they wanted a view, where they wanted it opaque, and where they wanted a partial view. And the computer generated that image, which really became the architecture of the building. And as you see, this idea of Jali, and this is Amrish Arora. Somebody's phone is ringing. Oh, throw it away. Who is this idiot? No, this is not mine. This is the one I have stolen. So this we've got to throw in some water somewhere. This girl is going to, I want to keep it as far away as I can. It couldn't be mine. Where was I? Amrish Arora, building in this beautiful hotel in Jodhpur, where the Jali actually becomes the architecture of the building. And then you have this lovely background music of this phone ringing, and enjoy it, because the person who is ringing for is not going to get it. I work for Anil Ambani, and he said, you must remember that I come from a family where I made my money with textiles. So we took a textile and we looked at the waft and the web of a textile and then tried to make it into a screen for his building. So that is what the building could look like, and some of our work. This is a work we did for Min Suk Chu, and I introduced him to the idea of the Jali for a possibility of a hotel which we were trying to do in Pune. Jean Nouvel, who won the Pritzker Prize for the Institute of Arab Studies in Paris, this is the building he won it for. And this is a building of the idea of a Jali, which is made in stainless steel, and it is like the aperture of a camera. If there is less light, the aperture becomes big. If it is more light, the aperture becomes small. So this facade is continuously moving. And it's an extraordinary idea, and I think it is ideas like this that I wish you to look and pursue. It has also subsequently changed his architecture all over the world. I was 23. I think the age many of you are today. And this, I used to swim for India, and this professor was at the swimming pool, and who was an archaeologist, and he took me to this buried city of Champaner, and he, after we went there 200-300 times, he said, will you give me 30 years of your life? I thought that was quite easy. It was my life. And I said, yes, I'll give you 30 years of my life. And he said, make it a World Heritage Site, and I will give you my 30 years of work tomorrow. I went tomorrow. He had died the night before. But the one thing he did before he died is he put his 30 years of work in a trunk, in a black trunk, half the size of this table, wrote my name on it, did not have dinner, and went to sleep and died. And that became my mission. So at that time, at the age that you are today, I had a mission. It was not a mission that I chose. It was a mission that I got, if I may use the word. And that was my site. And eventually it gave me great pride that when we won this as a World Heritage Site, I asked the President of India, who had come to inaugurate my green building, which became the greenest building in the world in that year as well. He came and put the World Heritage plaque at Champaner. I've often been called the champ of Champaner, but these are the young stewards of Champaner that I am now training to look after their city. So my message, one of my messages to you is that this was my Champaner. Champa is a flower, and the yellow of the champa is the same color as the Rio light of Champaner, and Nair is city. So Champaner, the city of the Frangipani. So this is my Champa and my Champaner. You all must find out your Champa and your Champaner. And I say something to you. You must decide a goal for yourself. Set an impossible standard and an impossible goal. Because if you set a goal which you can achieve, you'll achieve it, and then you'll get stuck. Then what do you do? Because you've already achieved it. So set a goal which you can't achieve, and then spend the rest of your life trying to achieve that goal. You know, if you invest money, you get progress, but you add culture and investment, you get responsible progress, as Wolfenson of the World Bank and Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum say. And therefore, when I got introduced to LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is an American green rating system, and I won the award, the Platinum Award for the greenest building in the world, I had to go and receive the award. And there were 7,000 people who were invited for lunch when I received this award. And I did not want to be rude because I was winning their award, but I didn't want them to feel that they had taught me something new. So I found these pictures, and that's a painting dated 1571, and this is 1654. And all the things that LEED said we should do were in this painting. So I said that, the sad thing is that we forgot our heritage. Thank you for reminding it to me. So I thanked the Americans not for the award, but I thanked the Americans for reminding me what I had forgotten. And that's what I want to remind you of. So that's the building. That is President Kalam who comes to the building. We were able to achieve 88% efficient lighting. 75% of the occupants had outside views. 80% were recycled material. And I found this plaque in the center. I found it in Champaner. And look at the beauty of the plaque. 800 years ago, this plaque says that if you can save the equivalent water of the hoof of a camel in the sand, this is the hoof of a camel, about so much. This hoof in the sand, you will go to heaven. So much water. Not 2 liters of water, not 2.3% of what you think, not a bucket of water. The equivalent of the hoof of a camel in the sand. That's so much water. So look at this, that 800 years ago, when there was certainly no water crisis, that was what the plaque said. And therefore, this is what we did in the building. I also want to tell you as students, if ever you do something new, there are 3 reactions you will pass through, which I passed through for my in Champaner. One is, everyone will tell you that the idea is ridiculous. You're a donkey, gada, budu, idiot, fool, tattoo. What a stupid idea. The second is, they will dismiss it as trivial. It's not important here. What's the big deal? No big deal. And then, when you get it, he'll say, but I told you. That's what you should have done. No? So, you're never going to get someone to say, shabash, great idea, you're a tiger. Not happening. No one is going to say, I love you. Fabulous. They'll call you a kaddu or a tattoo. Then they'll say, no big deal. And then they say, we told you that you should do it. So don't worry, that's what we all go through. Clinton said to me, President Clinton said, you can make a good building, a new building, what about a bad building? Can you retrofit a bad building? So we chose the worst building in Ahmedabad, convinced our client, ABN AMRO, to take their interior, recycle the whole interior, and made it the first platinum interior in the world outside the United States. Having done that, I felt that if I could do it for a new building and for an old building, what about industry? So we went on to make a factory, which then became the greenest factory in the world, and we have just done a factory of a pre-engineered building, which is the first gold-rated pre-engineered building in the world. So the fact I'm trying to get at is that you can do a green building with any building that you want, and ultimately, the idea of the building is, or the idea of our intervention, or the idea of your architecture is to produce this harmony of man and the world, where we live together in harmony. And this is a Jain icon which is 2000 years old, and you can see that man, which is the negative cutout, and the brass plate, which is the world, are in complete harmony with each other. I was asked by the Sultan of Oman that could we help develop an architecture of Oman, and I'm going to run through this. We looked at the forts of Oman, and then he said, do you think we could do a fort hotel? We looked at the hill outside Muscat. We tried to understand thick walls, small openings, how can we build a fort, and ultimately the project would look something like that. We got another beautiful site. We wanted to use the rocks from that site. We then used that as our building material. And yet another area at Musandam where it was very barren, and we wanted to have a very focused, what I call Garden of Paradise. So we did a project where we had the Garden of Paradise in the center. So that was the Garden of Paradise, which then took this form, and it came out of the ground and went back into the ground. The Ministry of Tourism said, can you help us evolve an architecture for our building? We looked at the idea of wind towers, wind coolers, the garden of 5 senses, and produced a kind of architecture of place. So don't fight forces, use them, as Buckminster Fuller said. I want to talk to you about 10 ideas on building responsibly. This is another word I want to use. I talked about changing lives. I talked about bringing humanity in your work. I'm now going to talk about building responsibly. So one is, you sit lightly on the earth. Some of the pictures that you see is our work. The other idea is with passive design, we were able to cool this building by 11 degrees. And the more you use passive design, as you see in the pyramid on the left, the less you have to use active systems, and the less you use vernacular systems, the more expensive your building becomes. This is a friend's work, Bijoy Jain, you may have heard of him. This is a building he's done in Alibag. This is a school in Bangladesh, done by architects from your country. They won the Aga Khan Award for architecture. 2 students came, worked with mud. This is something that we did for the Minister of the Environment. Here I just want to say, and that's the only reason I'm showing you this building, is that whenever I went abroad, there was a certain arrogance. And the people in the West said, technology has the answer. Now, what is your question? I said, why don't you wait for me to ask my question? They said, we don't want to know your question because we have the answer. Now you can tell us the question. And I wanted to prove that they were wrong. So in this building, we tried to quantify for the first time internationally as to what is the role of passive design in architecture. And so if you look at the energy being that triangle which is coming down, the energy consumed in a building with passive design, we found out that 50% of the reduction of energy in a green building is actually because of design, and the other 50% is because of technology. So the idea of orientation, if your buildings are north-south, you get the north light and the south light. East and west you close. The idea of orienting your buildings north-south, the fact that the sun goes from the east to the west. If you insulate east and west, if you have walls which are insulated, you include courtyards and work with the wind, with these 5 ideas you can do any other building. Very simple, common sense approach. If you look at the idea of slim buildings, you can bounce light about 7 meters. So if your building is about 15 to 18 meters wide, the building can be 100% daylit. Let's look at this room. This room has 200 lights, and we cannot use this room without these 200 lights. There is no way to bring natural light into this room, and we may not really need it if it's not being used for a presentation. So the very fact that slim buildings can also be nice looking buildings, the idea of the Jali I have spoken. This is a new building we're doing for Mr. Tata and Naveen Patnaik, the Chief Minister of Orissa. This is a 500-bedded hospital. As well as, I've spoken about this, the fact that we can reduce concrete, the fact of using local materials, zero waste. And this is a new project. We are one of 3 architects building the new Vidhan Sabha for Naya Raipur. So that's the building. And what we are trying to do is to try to reinterpret and re-evaluate and re-understand our vernacular architecture. And this is my understanding. You may not agree with it, but it was an attempt because the architecture in Raipur is a disgrace. They are very nondescript, stupid buildings the government is building, and I just felt that they should go back and relook at buildings. We have plants in India that can clear the grey water and make it usable for landscaping, the idea of efficient daylight, and we are now calculating carbon-free campuses. This is a campus which is going to generate 3,000 tons of carbon during the construction, and we've convinced the client that if we have a forest of 23.6 acres, this carbon can be offsetted. So, I want you to know that in 2030, till 2030, we are going to build a new Chicago every year. That's huge. I want to tell you that 68 cities will have a greater population than 1 million, 2 times that of Europe. That's wow. And you guys are going to be the guys who are going to build it. And therefore, you guys have to be careful. And therefore, one idea is, and these are 6 ideas, should we make it fashionable, or how do we make green fashionable? How do we make green the new black? Can we build more with less? Is it possible to re-understand our green heritage? We must work in a community. We must collaborate with people. It is responsible change that we are looking at, and that we must crusade without a pause. I think these things are the things we must do. I also feel that you must not be arrogant. I think that we have in this room today people from other cultures, and I respect them, and I want them to know that we respect what they are doing in their own fields, in their own countries, and we have to also learn from them. So do not be arrogant, because the West was arrogant. They said they had nothing to learn from us, and today they are discovering that we have a surfeit of ancient wisdom which they don't have, because they're only 250 years old. And therefore I told you right in the beginning that your work is to discover your work, and then with all your heart to give yourself with it. So this is what I was talking. You can take the phone actually. Okay, you were just putting it off. Well done, thank you. Now I can take it home quietly. A friend of mine, Rahul, talks about basic architecture being economical. If you can make it contextual, it's great. If you can promote social interaction, wow. But the most fantastic architecture is if it can be timeless. That is the Shabash architecture. So that is what you guys have got to do. Not contextual, not economical, not to promote social interaction, but to make it timeless. And I'm going to show you a little video clip of I was the nominator for the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, and convinced the Aga Khan to have this Aga Khan Award for Architecture in India. And we were at this garden in India when I'm now at 1 hour. I'm going to run 5 minutes into your time. Into whose time? Your time. 5 minutes. We were in this fantastic garden in Nizamuddin, and we are all brown, as in brown skinned. And this young black boy went to every table and asked if he could sit. And you know, Indians are very color conscious. We think we are whiter and fairer than you are. So everybody said no. And then he came to my table, which is the head table, and said, "Can I sit on your table?" And I said, "Sure, sit. Sit next to me." He won the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. He was the winner. And when he got up, he spoke in flawless English. And then he got stuck for a word, and he said, "You know, I grew up in Africa, and it was a French colony. Can I finish the rest of my speech in French?" Spoke flawless French, and got stuck for another word. He said, "I studied architecture in Germany. Can I just finish the rest of my speech in German?" Spoke flawless German. And then he said, "You know, my dad is in the audience, and he doesn't understand French, English, or German, can I speak in African? And he's finished in African. And what he did was, he built a school of 3 rooms. And he saved $50,000, collected $50,000. And he built the school and won the Aga Khan Award for architecture. But more extraordinary was that his grandparents said to him, we want to go back to school. So his grandparents went back to his school.
I would like to show you how architecture has helped to change the life of my community and have opened opportunities to hope. I am a native of Burkina Faso. According to the World Bank, Burkina Faso is one of the poorest countries in the world. But what does it look like to grow up in a place like that? I am an example of that. I was born in a little village called Gando. In Gando, there was no electricity, no access to clean drinking water, and no school. But my father wanted me to learn how to read and write. For this reason, I have to leave my family when I was 7 and to stay in a city far away from my village with no contact to my family. In this place, I sat in a class like that with more than 150 other kids, and for 6 years. And this time, it just happened to me to come to school to realize that my classmate was died. Today, not so much has changed. There is still no electricity in my village. People still die in Burkina Faso, and access to clean drinking water is still a big problem. I had a luck. I was lucky because this is fact of life when you grow up in a place like that. But I was lucky. I had a scholarship. I could go to Germany to study. So now, I suppose I don't need to explain to you how great a privilege it is for me to be standing before you today. From Gando, my home village in Burkina Faso, to Berlin in Germany to become an architect is a big step. So, but what to do with this privilege? Since as a student, I wanted to open up better opportunities to other kids in Gando. I just wanted to use my skills and build a school. But how do you do when you're still a student and you don't have money? Oh yes, I started to make drawings and ask for money. Fundraising was not an easy task. I even asked my classmate to spend less money on coffee and cigarette, but to sponsor my school project. You will wonder, 2 years later, I was able to collect $50,000. When I came home to Gando to bring the good news, my people was over the moon. But when they realized that I was planning to use clay, they were shocked. A clay building is not able to stay in a rainy season, and Francis wanted us to use it and build a school. Is this the reason why he spent so much time in Europe studying instead of working on the field with us? My people build all the time with clay, but they don't see any innovation with man. So I had to convince everybody. I started to speak with the community, and I could convince everybody, and we could start to work. And the women, the men, everybody from the village was part of this building process. I was allowed to use even traditional techniques. So clay floor, for example, the young man comes and say like that, beating. Hours for hours, and then their mother comes, and they beat in this position for hours, giving water and beating, and then the polisher comes. They start polishing it with a stone for hours, and then you have this result, very fine, like a baby bottom. It's now Photoshop. This is the school built with the community. The walls are totally made out of compressed clay blocks from Gandu.
So that was the school, very beautiful building. Very quickly, the green technology for the future, floating cities, small footprints, sustainable. Can we all live together in a place where there is no public transport and it's limited, that you work and you live and you have your recreation in the same area? Can we build floating cities? Is it possible that 500,000 people habited floating city? Is it possible to look at walking paths up skyscrapers? Can we make farms in tall buildings like they're doing in Abu Dhabi? Is it possible to have a form of a building which generates thermal cooling and rainwater harvesting? Is it possible to include turbines in a building to produce energy? Can this building actually move and complete a revolution every 90 minutes? And in so doing, between each floor, there is a turbine which generates electricity. Is it possible for the skin of a building to be like nanotechnology and generate energy? These are the kind of things that are happening in the world. I was very moved when I heard Michael Caine talk about this incredible poetry which he reads. I say to you that that is what architecture is all about, even though he doesn't mention a word of architecture.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truths you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son.
This is one of the most beautiful words of advice given by a father to a son. But I say that I cheat it in the same vein to give it to you. And so therefore, this is the last slide, and you asked me why I talked about being a human in the minimum. It occurred to the Buddha that any enlightened individual must return to nature and society and work for reducing pain and suffering of fellow human beings and of nature. These virtues included principles of care and concern, of nurture and nourishing, of healing the hurt and compassion for everything and everyone. The Buddha brought this profoundly radical realization back to the people. He walked from village to village for more than 40 years, explaining in the simplest language that neither pain for the self is to be avoided, nor is it to be caused to another. The total denial of the self and the ego, and the total acceptance of the responsibility to relieve the world of its pain are the essence of stewardship. To be able to empty oneself out, to forget oneself, so that one never fails to remember that the continued existence of our planet is far more important than any partisan triumph for any of us, and that its selfless nurture is our responsibility. And I'm going to end with this, that it is your responsibility. So when you build responsibly. Thank you.